Kevin, good to see you.
Yes,
Thank,
you
thank you.
likewise, Paul.
Thanks for making a bit of time. I'm conscious you've had to get up really early to come on the show this morning. But so thank you for that. I want to kick off by asking you about something that you said to me. We were talking a couple of weeks ago, and you said, and it stuck in my mind because it's a very, very interesting quote. You said, media is like oxygen for business. I mean, what did you mean by that, and why is it important to you?
Well, it's a great thing that you brought back up, Paul. Media is like oxygen. What I mean by that, very simply, is because it's so omnipresent, not just for a number of years, but even more so recently. There's so many different forms of media. And then the ways that we consume media, or as they like to say these days, media consumption. It's all around you. And if it's all around you, that means it's very that unlikely that you won't be consuming it. So, like oxygen, breathing,
Yeah.
media is like oxygen.
Tell me, Kevin, why is that important to you, to Channel NYC?
Well, it's important to us, Paul, because we're focusing on putting together two forms of media. The two most popular forms, actually, one being video content,
Yeah.
short form video content, and then it's a sort of an extension of the legacy of broadcast, meaning live. Now, there's live streaming and there's different iterations of it, but we prefer here to refer to it as broadcast because it has a lot of resemblance to, as they say, local TV, where either you have the networks that do their programming, then you have local content that's focused on the particular market. So we're a hybrid video, like what you have on YouTube,
Yeah.
okay, and then live broadcasts, which you have on the major networks such as an ABC, CBS, NBC, but on the local version.
Okay. And what is it you're trying to achieve exactly? I mean, I know you're focused on New York City, and it's a city that I love. I mean, I've been there on numerous
Yeah.
occasions. I mean, it's a great city. What is it you're trying to achieve exactly?
Well, we wanted to do something different, Paul. What I mentioned earlier about media being like oxygen, it's all around you. What you've noticed recently when you follow media is that the major players, and I'm referring to YouTube and Netflix, in order to expand their reach into the audience, they particularly focus on different elements of the most popular components of what people consume. And I don't mean food. I'm talking in terms of entertainment and content. So, for example, Netflix, they've been known for the longest time for videos, meaning
Yeah.
movies, documentaries, TV shows. It's a repository for everything that's ever been viewed by the consumer. Netflix, on the other hand, it's all about video content being generated either by users or by other media forms of companies, and they're putting it there. So what you notice now that they're the two biggest, let's say, subscription forms of media compared to any other of the companies. And what they've been doing recently, Paul, now is trying to expand into the other areas where there's a large market. For example, Netflix now in the past year, they've taken on sports, the NFL, they're also taken on the UFC, and now they've added the WWE. And on top of that, they're into podcasts. What are those all? Those all different forms of media that have a large exposure in the market. Netflix, on the other hand, they have a limited amount of inventory that they can add to because there's only so many different producers of content, meaning broadcast, meaning TV shows. So now they're creating content in house. YouTube, on the other hand, what they're doing is expanding into the markets that they weren't in previously, i.e., the NFL. They're doing live broadcasts, the networks, and they're putting it all under one location. That's what Channel NYC is doing. We're looking to do something for one particular market, and our name, New York City, and we're taking the three or four most popular things that people like to do or need to do. Besides video entertainment and broadcast, we're looking at what you call job boards. Yeah, always looking for work at one point or
Yeah.
another in your career. So why not focus on the local New York City market, being it's the largest city in the country? Then number two, dating, as I mentioned to you earlier. It's in the
Yeah.
top 30 of the most popular sites that people search for on a regular basis. And then not last but not least, we're looking at business service listings. Everybody wants to search for some type of business or service or something in the local area. So if you put it all under one location, one platform, that makes our market, makes our platform something unique. Similar to what YouTube and Netflix are doing, but on a different scale and in a different market.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very clever idea. That I mean, how did you? I mean, how did you come up with the idea? I mean, what? Tell us about your background. How did you get to where you are, if you see what I mean? I mean, what set you on this?
Yes. Well, when it started out originally, Paul, my background originally was in ad sales, advertising sales, and sales in one form or another. I've been
Yeah,
doing sales, B2B sales for about 20 plus years. And over the last 10 years, or I should say about 10 or 15 of those years, included advertising sales, working for some of the different media companies, which I mentioned before, Verizon, also WCBS in radio. And then I did some outdoor sales with Clear Channel, now known as iHeart. And then I finished up with another company in the media space, advertising media, which would be Adweek. When I came to the end of my career with those companies, I looked around and I was trying to figure out what would be the next logical thing for me to do, seeing as I have a passion for media and I'm experienced in sales and I love advertising. So I put the three of those together. I looked at where I'm at in New York City and I realized after doing a very thorough search, there was no standalone platform for video content for New York City. Very surprisingly, you can find content about New York City on many different platforms, but there's no one platform just for New York City content. And that was the genesis for Channel NYC.
wow. And let me ask you. I mean, building a business is quite a. I mean, every entrepreneur I talk to tells me that it's a tough gig. I mean, there are ups and downs. It's like riding a roller coaster. I mean, what is it about this particularly that kind of gets you out of bed every day to ride the roller coaster? I mean, what is it that is so, how come you're so passionate about it?
Well, it's a great question. Thank you for asking, Paul. It's actually twofold. One, I love the challenge of selling. Selling in itself is a challenge because you have to persuade, convince someone or somebody or something that what you have to offer, whether it's a product or a service, is of value to them. And then there's always that, as I said, conundrum. Is it a value or a usage? Because those are the two objection categories. Do I need this? Will I use it? And if you can convince the person or the persons that you possess something of value or need, you're three-quarters of the way there.
Yeah.
Price is secondary, but price is irrelevant if you don't have a value or a need. So what gets me up early every day, and I can't go to sleep until I'm done and then thinking about what's next, is the challenge of getting something accomplished. And the most important thing, obviously, is what I'm working on, which is my career. And my career involves Channel NYC.
Sure. And let me ask you, I know you're relatively early in the journey still. I mean, have you had any surprises so far? Things that you thought, oh, that's not quite what I expected?
That's a great question. How much time do I have to answer that one, Paul? Lots of surprises. Most interestingly enough, is the wide variety of what people consider content worth watching. Okay. Anything that you can put on right now, Paul, people will watch. The question is, how many people will watch, and will they watch it more than once? Meaning, will they come back and watch it again on your particular venue or platform? That was the biggest surprise. I mean, you have different ways to attract the audience, and that's outside of promoting it, outside of the marketing. As you know, in video, the biggest thing to get someone's attention is the thumbnail. And then the thumbnail, you have two things: the title, and then you obviously have the footage or whatever is the visual aspect. But what you realize, Paul, over the last, let's say, 5, 10 different, let's just say 5 to 10 years, the different outlets for video content, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, or all the other different iterations, the biggest thing that they want to do is attract eyeballs. And whether or not that content is actually of any substance seems to be secondary. It's about, can I get somebody to watch it? And now there's a trend towards making content that's either hyperbolic, greatly exaggerated, maybe focus more on negativism than on positivism. Positivism, I don't know if that's a new word, Paul. But what you realize is just to get an audience, people will do the most outrageous things
Yeah.
on the video. And I don't mean them personally, but what the video consists of. So when you asked me earlier, what's some of the most surprising things that I realized is that it's not so much getting content that you think people will like. It's a matter of getting content that they like and they're going to come back and watch again. Because anybody can get a home run once. If you want to be great in your career, you got to do it over and over again and be successful at it.
And how are you going to do that on your channel? Because there's just so much stuff out there, isn't there? I mean, how are you going to work out what
Well,
what the right stuff is for your channel? Because it's a particular
well,
market, isn't it?
that's a great question again, Paul. What we try to figure out basically is starting with the most obvious things. Everything relevant to New York City or New Yorkers. That's our thesis. If you start with that foundation, what do you want to focus on? Well, we want to focus on the people. If you live in New York, anything longer than a year, you're a New Yorker. Okay.
Right.
And if that's the case, there's two types of audience. What we found out from the other channels or the other creators that are putting out video content. They either tend to focus on the tourists because New York has a cachet all its own. It's unlike any other city, at least in the US or maybe the world. And when you attach the name New York City or New York to your video content title, it seems to draw a larger audience than if you put Chicago or Birmingham or London on there. No offense, Paul. Okay. So what we realized on the content development aspect was even more so, people like to watch about stories about other people, whether it's a 30-second story or a 30-minute story. So we try to focus on things that involve talking to people and getting their expressions of thoughts across for the audience to take it in. If you can do a video about the waterfall, the Empire State Building, Times Square, yes, that's fine. What's interesting about that? Well, maybe you watch the people, but if you're not talking to them, not engaging them, then you're doing a disservice to the audience. And what we found working along the different varieties of our content, parades, events, they involve people. But when we do interviews, that really gets your attention because people want to know what other people are thinking. So we're in the process of trying different aspects of video content that involve either, as we like to say, person to person, or it's about a person.
Yeah. And let me just ask you, this is sort of just something that's going through my mind at the moment. I mean, one of the things we see on UK TV at the moment is politics. I mean, it's really big at the moment because of what's happening in the Middle East and because of Donald Trump and what have you. Now, you've just got a new mayor in New York. I mean, are you doing stuff around politics or are people not that interested? I mean, I'm never
Well, that
sure whether that's something that really interests people or it doesn't. I mean, I'm never sure about that.
yeah.
How's it playing out with you?
Well, I'm glad that you framed that question that way about politics. Two of the things, as we like to refer to, the third rail, and that's a euphemism for what you never want to touch,
Right.
is politics and religion. And the reason why we stay clear of that
Right.
is because there's so many different, let's say, emotions involved in
Yeah.
the viewer's aspect. But that being said, we could still have an interview with a politician, but we would not necessarily talk about politics. Same thing with the religious or religion. We might speak to someone that may have a religious background, but we don't necessarily have to discuss religion. So that's how we would take that approach, Paul, but it's not a focal point on our content. We
Yeah.
tend to stay clear of things that have a diverse range of emotions, and we try to focus more on things that we all have in common. Meaning, if you go to an event, if you go to a parade, you're not worrying about is it from a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian. Same thing if you go to a parade. You're not worried about is it Christian, is it Catholic, is it, you get the idea. Here in New York, there's over 800 different cultures and languages. So we want to focus on what people can find that they can relate to, and that's usually based on events and people talking about other people.
Yeah, yeah. No, I certainly follow the logic of that. Let me ask you about one of the points you've made. I mean, there is so much going on. I mean, there are just so many things going on. There's so much going on. How do you work out? I mean, I take your point about avoiding politics and avoiding religion, but there are so many other things. I mean, how do you work out what to focus on? I mean, is it purely events that are based in New York? Is it events that are of interest to New Yorkers that might be in other parts of the country? I mean, how does that, just explain how that works?
Well, that's another great question because there's so many different things to choose from. But what
Yeah,
we try to do, Paul, is put them into certain categories of level of interest. And I'll give you an example. What we find out from our audience demographics is we're two-thirds men, 1/3 women. And women are 50% of the population in most places, or at least the market audience. So we want to strengthen our exposure into things that interest women, because it tends to be that if you have more women watching in your audience, that naturally would generate more men, depending on the topic. But again, we want to focus on things that bring a balance to the audience's level of interest. And with women, there's fashion, there's beauty, there's health, there's lifestyles. And did I mention dating before? Okay. Or relationships. So with men, it's mostly sports and athletic events and things that might be of a different nature. So we decided to focus on what would appeal to people here in New York that we could agree on. For example, we might focus on something to do with public transportation, whether it's the bus, the subways, things of that nature. Also, as we mentioned before, very popular, crosses all types of cultural and demographic groups, is events and parades. And then when we do our interviews, like one of our best features, Welcome to New York City, which I mentioned to you before,
Yeah, yeah.
we're interviewing people that are coming to visit New York City, whether they're from outside of the market, outside of the country, from a different part of the world. And we want to find out what brought them to New York and what their impressions are. So that covers all ranges of different cultures and people. And
And
then we try to expand on those categories of features, Paul.
let me ask you about that. I mean, when you've interviewed people that are coming to visit New York, I mean, I'm just curious.
Yes.
I mean, I've been there quite a few times. What is it? I mean, why do people come to New York? What is it about New York? Because New York has a certain something. I don't know what it is.
Yes.
A certain something, as you said, that probably it's the only, in a way that other cities don't. What is it
Yes.
people are saying about? Why do they come to New York? I mean, what do they say?
It's the vibe. It's the cachet. It's like if I went to London and I said, I've got to go to Buckingham Palace. Okay. I've got to visit the Queen. You cannot go to London without at least visiting either what's that circle, the thing that spins around outside, or the
Right.
Thames. All
Yeah.
right. Or the Buckingham. Like I said, there's certain things. But instead of places, here it's the city itself. New York it's a city all unto itself. The name resonates, everything that I could possibly like to do, and it's the coolest place to do it at. So when people come to visit New York, they usually mention the same three or four or five different things: Times Square, Statue of Liberty, Empire State Building, maybe Central Park.
Yeah.
And then you start to find out what did they do after they went there. So then we also ask them, what do they think about New York and New Yorkers? And that's where the conversation and responses get very interesting.
Yeah. And so let me just ask you about that. I mean, when I went to New York the first time, I mean, one of the things that struck me about it, it was that it was very friendly. People were very friendly in a way that, I mean, I came from London. It wasn't, people weren't quite so friendly in London, whereas they were very, I mean, do tourists comment on the fact that New Yorkers are pretty friendly? I mean, does that happen a lot? Is that one of the attractions?
Absolutely.
Friendly.
Because what we try to do, Paul, is ask them what were their thoughts before they arrived in New York, assuming that that's their first time, because we've had people that have come multiple times, but usually the people that are visiting New York for the very first time, they've formed an opinion, mostly based on what they've seen and heard, probably on media, probably on TV, not so much from friends and neighbors. And then when they get here, they walk around and we like to ask them, now that you're here, what has changed? What do you think about New York and the New Yorkers? That's usually the last two questions that we ask. We also ask what do they do while they're here, and how long are they staying, and what is their impression, and get the idea of, well, in the time that they're here, whether it's a couple of days or whether it's a week, are their impressions matching up with their thoughts in advance? And then what we find out is, overall, they say New Yorkers are much different than they expected, more and nicer than they thought, because we seem to have a reputation that, as they like to say, Paul, our reputation precedes us,
Yeah. Yeah.
and mostly for being rude or this, that, and the other. But 90% of the people, when we ask that question, what do you think about New York? What do you think about New Yorkers? It tends to be positive. A couple
Yeah.
of things about either the garbage, the noise, the air. A couple of rude people might make an impression that they think carries over to everybody, but usually it's different from what they anticipated it to
Yeah,
be.
yeah. I mean, like I said, when my memories of going there the first time were that people are incredibly friendly. Let me ask you one other thing that really interests me about New York is that it's almost as if even if I hadn't been to New York, I know New York because it appears in so many TV shows and movies. So when you
Yes,
walk, when I remember walking around thinking, have I been here before? Because it's so recognizable, because it's in so
yeah.
much. Do you do a lot with the kind of the people making movies? I mean, are people, I mean, I've lost track a little bit, but do people come and make a lot of movies still in New York? Does that sort of stuff feature?
That's another very good question, Paul. And I'm going to give that a two-part answer. Yes, they still make a lot of TV shows more than
Right.
movies. The two most famous ones are Law and Order, based in New York. It's New York through and through, and you only have to walk a few blocks if you're here during the, let's say, TV season, which runs year round, and you'll see the signs on the street poles filming street clothes, and they'll tell you the
Yeah,
name of
yeah,
the show. Most of the time, it's Law and Order. However, I happen to post a couple of, let's say, social media topics having to do with TV shows, but even more so, movies that were filmed or supposedly took place in New York,
right.
but all they did was use the exteriors of New York and they filmed it elsewhere. Give me an example. The Karate Kid movie that came out last year, I think it was the fifth version of it with
Yeah.
Jackie Chan. And so they did the exteriors in Toronto. Okay.
Really?
Yes, but they did a couple scenes in New York, very few scenes in New York, but the movie's supposed to take place in New York. How can you not film it all in New York? You go to Toronto, okay? Same thing with Sylvester Stallone's new show, Tulsa King. He came to New York last season, did a couple of small scenes down in, I think it was either Little Italy or Chinatown, but then they went back to do the interiors down in Atlanta, Georgia. So when you ask me, do they still film things in New York? Yes, they borrow the name a lot more than they actually set up
Yeah.
shop here,
Yeah.
though.
Which tells you about brand New York, though, doesn't it? It tells you how powerful the New York brand is. People want to
Well,
go
that's what I
to
would
it.
say earlier in the beginning of our interview. I said there's a lot of channels that attach New York to their name. If you took off New York from the title of their show or their name, you wouldn't think it would be any different than anything someplace else.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the business. Where, I mean, tell me where you're. I know roughly what you're doing, but tell me where you're going with the business. I mean, how do you see the business developing over the next few years? Give us a sense of the direction of travel.
Sure. Right now, this is our year number two of the company. We started in 2024. And in fact, we launched this time, well, not exactly. We had a launch date of this time last year in April. The launch got delayed, as I mentioned to you before,
Yeah.
and we launched in August. And then we had some difficulties with the platform not being what we wanted to do. So we did an alternate, which was to focus on using YouTube to put our platform on, running promos, commercials, all that thing while we renovate the platform. So we're now back to transitioning to using the platform as our main venue and YouTube as an adjunct. I'll use the analogy very quickly, Bob. It's sort of like having the highway and the service road. The highway is our main platform. The service road was YouTube. We went to the service road for a few months, still travel, but now we're back on the highway. So the business plan basically is we wanted to use video, VOD, video on demand, which we're doing now, to set the foundation of our content to draw the audience in with
Yeah.
different varieties of the content we mentioned. Short form video, focusing on lifestyles and things of that nature. Then we added the other components that we mentioned to you on the homepage, which is the dating, job board, the cultural groups. We mentioned a couple of the things that are in the works. And then we want to focus primarily, most and foremost, Paul, is broadcast. As I said before, we want to almost be a hybrid, a little bit of video and a lot of broadcast live TV. So the plan for the remainder of this year is to transition the audience from knowing us as a video platform to a broadcast platform to a one-stop shop for all things New York content based.
Okay.
Next year, we're hoping to build on that and gain market presence so that when you think of advertising in New York City's media market, Channel NYC is a must have in your media mix.
Yeah.
That's the plans for the next couple of years.
And let me ask you about the broadcast piece. I mean, what does that mean in a practical sense? Does that mean talk shows? Does it mean, I mean, what do you mean by broadcast as it relates to New York City? I mean,
Sure,
what sort of things will we, if we went to the site, if we went to the
sure.
platform, what sort of things would we see?
Okay, you'll see about 80% of it in studio. And in other words, maybe 15 to 20% would be outside the studio doing live events. Again, different
Right.
variation of what you do on video. We're not doing it live. Or we're going to have some elements of news in there. So essentially, a local news channel, if you were going by that, or a local news programming channel, or a local programming channel that's an adjunct of the network version, we're going to localize it here for Channel NYC. So it's not significantly, or let's say theoretically different from what you see now. It's
Yeah.
just more concentrated on everything about New York because the local channels, and there's about six of them, they're doing really things based on programming from the network. The network does it on a national basis. So there's very few programs that identify specifically with New York City outside of the local news and maybe one or two programs once a week. We're going to be all New York 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
So the
Okay.
same programs that you see, like talk shows, we'll do a New York version. There's a couple of those now on the networks, on the local ones, but we'll also expand on that. There'll be some politics in there, interviews of politicians. There'll be some other dating shows. There'll be other things that are a variation of what you see now, but focus specifically on New York City.
Okay. And let me ask you about the news piece. I mean, I like to watch the news every day. I mean,
Yes.
is there, I mean, are New Yorkers interested in kind of New York news? Is that something that is there's a lot of demand for? And what sort of things, I mean, I don't know much about news gathering, but what sort of
Yeah.
things happen in terms of local news? I mean, just give us a flavor of how the news bit works.
Okay. And that's great that you asked that one, Paul, because we have a lady that works with us, Anita Bonita, who has over 50 years of news experience working most recently on Channel, I'm sorry, I say Channel NYC, that's where she's at now. She used to work for the main news radio program,
Right.
company called WCBS 880. But essentially, what we're going to focus on your answer is most New Yorkers used to get their news like everybody else from newspapers. And newspapers were doing print, which converted once the internet became popular and mobile devices carried everything to digital. However, what we used to be in print is now a digital version. And if it's not digital, meaning it's not, carried on your cell phone or your tablet or your home computer, you're watching the news programs. But now that news has diversified into so many local segments, and New York City being 8.4 million people, five boroughs, different cultures, different areas, different, let's say, things of importance and significance to them on a daily basis, there's about 30 to 40 micro publishers, some owned by one company, some are individuals, some are
Wow.
bloggers. So there's a lot of different sources to get something even more micro than just New York City. You can get for your neighborhood, you can get for your borough, you can get by culture, and you can take those different sources collectively and pretty much get a good idea of what's going on day to day, week to week from New York City news wise. So
Right.
news is always going to be a big factor because not only do we consume news, we make news. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm talking about New York City.
Yeah. I mean, I was just about to ask you about that. I mean, what about, I mean, you mentioned earlier on about user generated content, about stuff that
Yeah.
people film on the streets and that's, I mean, have you got a lot of that sort of stuff going on and how does that work?
Well, we haven't focused on that yet, Paul, because you can go right to TikTok, you can go to Instagram, and you can
Right.
see any level of, let's say, user generated content. We're going to integrate that into our programming, probably more so on the broadcast. And I say broadcast as a euphemism for live, where we might figure out what best way to interest the population, meaning our audience, based on having users generating content along with creators and along with influencers. They might all be one and the same, and also separately. But a good combination of that, Paul, will be a very big draw and a big part of our programming.
Yeah. I mean, and you just mentioned influencers and I mean, obviously
Yes.
you've got advertisers. I mean, just tell me about the way you're going to work with those two groups, influencers and advertisers, because they're really, I mean, I guess advertisers are part of how you generate revenue, but influencers are going to be partly how you kind of connect with people, aren't they? I mean, tell us about how
Yes.
you're going to work with them to build the channel going forward.
Sure. I'm glad you mentioned that one because there's a certain component that we want to focus on, as you know, entertainment, meaning such as the entertainment industry, like Hollywood, New York City, among others. There's always things going on in the entertainment industry, i.e., you've got influencers now, which wasn't prevalent 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Now it's the biggest thing. You could have a separate channel of your own, just being an influencer or a podcast, and you could have the same exposure and bandwidth as let's say a media channel, or for example a media program like what we're familiar with here in New York is called Entertainment Tonight. All they focused on, or like BuzzFeed, no, not BuzzFeed, I'm sorry, TMZ, where all they focus on is what goes on in Hollywood or Cannes, all the major, let's say, movie markets, all the movie studios, all the movie and TV programs. All they talk about is actors, producers, media companies. So we want to figure out who has the most significance here in New York that would be under that category of influencer that the audience would either like to hear from, talk to, or maybe even better, collaborate with them, meaning Channel NYC and that influencer, to come up with a program or a regular feature that would incorporate them. Because there's all types of influencers that are relevant to New York, Paul, because that's the key thing. You've got to be either living here in New York, to New York, from New York, or doing something in New York. If you can check one of those boxes or all four, we want to talk to you. We got a place for you here.
Yeah. And what about the advertisers? I mean, presumably that's the basis of the business model is people wanting to advertise because presumably they want to get eyeballs from all the people you've just talked about.
Correct. Well, we have two forms of advertisement. There's obviously the digital form, which is the commercials that you see on every other major media platform. But then there's also the local advertise, local meaning the business services. That's a different form of advertising because it's similar to what you would call the classifieds many, many years ago, or the services like we used to have 20 years ago, the yellow pages. But now you go to local.com, yelp.com, you might even go to Google and search for it. So what we're trying to do is balance between advertising, what you normally would see, which generates 90% of our revenue, and then factor that in where you're seeing things that are relevant to New York City. We want to be, like I said, the main vehicle when you're thinking about advertising to the masses here in New York. Channel NYC needs to be part of your mix. That being said, there's different ways to advertise, not much different from what you see here. You see the static strip, you see the billboard, you see the video.
Yeah.
In fact, TuneIn Radio is a good example. Not only do they have three forms of advertising all running simultaneously. They've got they're carrying the audio or the video from, like, say, a CNN. So CNN will run their advertisement on top of TuneIn Radio. TuneIn Radio will cut off CNN's ad and run their own video ad. Then they have a static banner crawl. Then they have the audio. That's a little much for us. We don't want our platform to look like Times Square. We'd rather just run the video ad and maybe a static banner ad, as we call it, Paul. Beachfront property, top of the page. You can't miss it. You'll see that static ad. It's there incessantly long, along with the video content.
Yeah. And let me ask you, we talked earlier on about tourists, people coming to New York. I mean,
yes.
If I was to go to New York next week, I mean, and I went to Channel NYC, what sort of information would I be able to get that would help me, in terms of being a visitor? Let's say I came for a long weekend or a week or something.
Sure.
To New York. What sort of information would I be able to get from you that would add value to my trip to New York?
Okay. That's another great question that you've been asking nothing but great questions, Paul, by the way. The hardest thing about what we put on content wise was trying to separate out what's designed for touristy, meaning where to go, what to do. There's a couple of main, what we call direct or indirect competitors that do that. No need to mention their names, but essentially there's no shortage of places that you can get content, Paul, for tourists. Tourists meaning sightseeing, tours, and a million different places to go, a million different things to do. We probably would limit it to the extent of an advertiser or maybe a feature video or broadcast on some particular area of interest or event or location for tourism. But there'll probably be a link down the platform where we have the different services you can reach to New York City, New York State. You click on and it'll say sightseeing, something, or attractions, because we have that in our business category. Events, attractions, restaurants. So the breadcrumbs are there, Paul. We just may not prominently mention tourists. Okay.
But lots of the information I might need, I could find there is the point, isn't it?
Absolutely, in one form or another. And we try to put everything, as I said to you in our very first conversation, we want to be a one-stop source location for all things New York, including tourist information. Tourism, we had over 60 million visitors last year, Paul.
Yeah.
We want to make sure some of them come and check out Channel NYC.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it seems to me, if you're coming to New York, you want to focus on stuff that's produced locally because that's going to be the best information, it strikes me. So it seems to me it'd be I mean, I would certainly check it out if I was going there because it seems to be quite a good source of reliable information. But let me ask you about, I mean, the end play, if you like. What is success? I mean, I know you're relatively early in the journey, only a couple of years into the
Yeah.
journey. What does success look like for you?
Success for us, Paul, comes twofold. Obviously, revenue,
Yep.
because without that, you're not going to get very far. And then number two, audience, let's say engagement. Obviously, we like to see nice size numbers, monthly active users, some type of back and forth. We don't refer to it so much as the comments that you would see people posting, reposting. That's for video and other platforms. But it's two things: the revenue, most importantly, because that dictates what we can do, what we can't do, what we can build on, and then the activity from the users. Not only are they watching us, but they're using the other components, as I mentioned
Yeah.
before, the other features of the platform. So the more that they come for one thing and they end up doing multiple things, that's a sign that we are in the right space at the right time with the right product. That would be success for us, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good luck and good luck with that. I mean, that seems to be a really useful goal. Let me ask you about the journey that you've been on. I mean, I know you've been at this for a couple of years, but and then you've got a bit of a history before that. I mean, what would you say you've learned from the experience?
The experience of building the company or
Yeah,
the journey to get here?
well, both actually, but I'm particularly interested in what you've learned from building the company. But tell us about both.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you about the journey first, because then I'll get to the company. The journey came in a very roundabout way. And I mentioned to you when we talked previously, I ended up being very unsuccessful at the one time. And I don't say I've been successful with everything, but and when I was let go from Adweek, I spent the better part of a year searching for the next position. And somehow, despite all the experience I had, couldn't get the offer that would say, come work for us. Millions of interviews, thousands of applications. I'm, giving you a rough idea. Spent the better part of the year. Then it came to the realization that it looked like I wasn't going to find anything of my liking. So I had one more interview, Paul. Interviewed myself. I think I told you that story. Didn't take long. Even got an on-the-spot answer. Made a decision. And I realized, what would I like to do that I'm really interested in, that I'm very passionate about, and I know a lot about? And that was media. And then, as you mentioned before, how I got to come up with Channel NYC was a little bit of a roundabout idea that expanded from just video, searching for the fact there was nothing on a standalone platform for video about New York City, because I saw video clips, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, but they were just clips. And then you have channels. And then I saw a lot of video content that just not only did it upset me and anger me, but it wasn't representative of New York. Either was exaggerated, it was the worst of New York. Everything that would make somebody who lives in New York and is passionate about it, such as I am, make you want to be motivated to come out with something to counteract that version of New York, which seemed to be very popular with viewers. I guess people like watching car crashes more than they want to see a car built.
Maybe.
Okay. So I put in about a year's worth of research, Paul. Everything I could find out about platforms, YouTube, TikTok, everything that goes into video content. That was just one aspect. Then how do people find content? What were they doing to search? What's the keywords? Then also what goes into making content? Studied about Netflix, QB, the one that didn't work out with Jeffrey Katzenberg. All the things that worked, all the things that didn't work. What's their business model, which obviously is on a scale exponentially larger than we'll ever do. But I tried to find out the components that made sense based on my knowledge, experience of being in media, but also being a New Yorker, and see what combination would be viable, then what would work. And let's see, take it out for a test drive. And here we are.
Well, and what is it that you've enjoyed most about working on the business? I mean, you come across, when we've spoken in the past, you come
Yes.
across as super enthusiastic about it, and I mean, I mean, I don't know whether it's true, but you appear to really enjoy it and to really
I
love
do.
what you're doing. I mean, what is
I
it
do.
about it that you enjoy so much?
Well, I'm passionate because, I believe in it, number one. Number two,
Yeah,
it's all the things that I love doing. The challenge, because every day is going to be different than yesterday.
yeah,
And whatever happened yesterday is just one step closer to getting what we want to accomplish. And getting there is just one part of the challenge. You want to stay there and expand on that. So the challenge for me, Paul, is to try to figure out what's going to work that didn't work yesterday, because not everything works. That's number one. Number two, how can we get to where we need to be, and then keeping in mind that we're probably not the only ones having the same idea as ourselves. So you want to look over your shoulder, but you also are happy to be the first, because we are the first standalone streaming platform here in New York City. Standalone meaning we're not an adjunct of the broadcast TV channels. We're a standalone streamer. So with that in mind, what finds the most excitement, Paul, is waiting to see what you're going to get accomplished today. That's what we're trying to do every day. Might be a small accomplishment, might be a little bit of progress. Every time that we're going forward, that's better than standing still or falling back.
yeah, absolutely. And let me ask you, you talked about how not everything works. I mean, I think pretty much every entrepreneur would say that not everything works. You know,
Yeah.
if you were starting again from scratch, what might
Yes.
you do differently, knowing what you know now?
Well, I probably would try to take a different approach where I'd be fully funded. That'd be one thing.
Right.
Have unlimited funds so I can get a lot more things done
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot sooner.
yeah,
Because right now it took a long time to get to where we are now, and we have a long way to go. But that's the enjoyable part about it, Paul. Because if it all came at overnight or within a month, you'd be wondering what else is it to focus on. We're
yeah,
not thinking about anything other than New York City. Even if we're tremendously successful beyond our wildest dreams, we're not looking to take this and replicate it in Chicago or London or Toronto. It just doesn't work there. We'd have to be in those markets to even understand what makes that different, what would appeal to the people living there. So when you ask me the question about what is it that we're looking to accomplish and what do we really want to get out of this, it's basically trying to be the most that we could give to people, something they've never had before, that they didn't even realize that they liked it as much. And that's what we're trying to do here at Channel NYC.
yeah, yeah. And good luck with that. And just one last question. If you were to give one piece of advice to somebody, a rookie CEO starting out on the
Sure.
journey that you've been on, and what would that one piece of advice be?
Okay. Well, I'm going to go back to finish the other part of my question, which I realized I didn't answer in full detail. What's the biggest challenge? What's the hardest thing to do over again? I probably, like I said, besides the funding aspect of it, Paul, you probably wouldn't change much because everything's a learning process. They always used to say, well, what could you have changed 20 years ago? You'd be different. You wouldn't be where you are now if you didn't do what you did or
Yeah,
you did what you
yeah,
didn't do. As they say, your life is a series of decisions that you've made. And the same thing with building Channel NYC. So the advice I would give is, first of all, to someone starting out is do as much research as you can. Paul, I think I read over 100 books, and that's probably the
wow,
short number.
wow.
Over 100 books, probably just as many downloads of white papers, 20 pages to 100 pages. Then I'm constantly on different streaming sources of digital information. I don't know how many email newsletters I get, but there's a lot, too many to count. So you want to focus on one, what is the plan that you're building? That's number one. Number two, what do you need to get it done? Number three, how are you going to go about it? What are the steps in the
Yeah,
process?
yeah,
And leaving room for modification, because nothing ever works the way you plan it to do. Even if you're successful, you'll find out you thought this would work and it doesn't, or you thought something that didn't work, I wasn't thinking about it, but now it's a great idea. So you have to be open to, as they say, not so much pivot, but change direction ever so slightly, keeping in mind you're not the only person that knows things very well. Taking as much advice from outside sources as you can. That'd be my advice.
lovely, Kevin. And I think that's a great piece of advice, actually, because what you're saying is stay open and
Yeah.
keep thinking about what you're doing, and that seems to me to be really, really good advice. So, Kevin, thank you for coming on. Thanks for sharing the story. I mean, it sounds like an absolute ride. I mean, really good, and I really appreciate you making time to come and talk about what you're doing. And good luck going forward.
Thank you. And Paul, when you come back to New York, make sure you stop in so we can talk to you and get you a welcome to New York City.
Sounds good to me. See you then.
Or even better yet, maybe you'll come by our studios. All right.
Absolutely. Cheers, Kevin.
Thank you, Paul. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.